Okay guys, in this lesson today, we're dealing in lesson 1, 2, and we're going to have a couple of different videos for this. This would be part 1. Going to talk about some data landmarks and dot plots. So just want you to kind of be listening here and looking at some of these different things on this dot plot here, and we'll go through some explanations here. There will also be a second video where it'll go a little bit more in depth. So right here guys, we have a dot plot, and you guys put in younger grades, you've made dot plots, but you a lot of times put X's here on these instead of dots. Okay, it's the same thing. We're just going to use dots now. Okay, and in this case, if you look, we're looking at number of siblings. Is the data that we're looking at that people have. So one person said that they had 8 brothers or sisters and siblings. A lot of people had 4, it looks like, and 2 and 1, and you kind of see these patterns pretty easily when you get a bunch of data into a dot plot. You can easily do some things with this. So we're going to introduce some terms, and we're going to really focus in this video on the minimum, the maximum, in the range. Okay, so those are the 3 we're going to start out with. The minimum, you can see we have labeled here. Some people have 0. The minimum means the least or the lowest, and in this case 3 kids had 0 siblings. Okay, so they were an only child. So there's my minimum. The maximum is the greatest, and in this case, one student had 8, which is quite a bit more than everybody else. We'll learn later that's called an outlier because it's a little bit different than what you normally see. So that's the maximum. And then the last one we're going to talk about here is the range. And the range of our data, guys, is the difference between the greatest and the least. So in this case, I can see, once I know my maximum is 8, there's my max, okay, and my minimum is 0. I can just subtract those 2, and I've got the difference between the greatest and the least. So 8 minus 0 is 8, and so again, we says here our range is 8, which is, in the number of siblings, that's a pretty good range. It can depend on what you're dealing with. On what this range is, if it's low or high, or if it's a lot, it kind of depends on the situation. And in this case, if somebody's got 0 brothers and sisters, and somebody has 8, that's a pretty big difference. So just making sure these are terms you've heard a lot, probably the maximum and the minimum, or the greatest and the least. You're pretty familiar with those. The range, sometimes kids struggle with what it means. Okay, and the range of the data, that difference between the greatest and the least. What's that range between that low and that high? How far is it? And that is the definition of the range. And knowing those things helps us understand the data a little bit better depending on what we're looking at with that data. Okay, so we're really going to focus just on those 3 things here and making sure you know those. We'll take a look at the mode and the median a little bit more in the next video. That's going to be a little bit more in depth, but just a brief discussion about that. The mode is the one that shows up the most. Okay, it's not the biggest. Okay, a lot of people think the mode sometimes means the biggest, but remember, that's the maximum. The mode is what's the most common. I always will say mode, most, and kids remember which one shows up the most. Okay, and in this case, the mode would be 1. Okay, a lot of people just had 1 brother or sister, 1 sibling, so that's the most common one, or the mode. And then the median. I don't know if you remember the median in the middle of a road. Usually it's yellow, and sometimes it's really high, so your car won't go the wrong way, run into that median and into traffic. The median's right in the middle, okay, of that road, and that's what the median means, that the middle number. Okay, so there's going to be an explanation coming up in the next video, and you can do it from here, and you can cross things off, and you can find the dead one in the middle there, okay, and which one's in the middle. And sometimes it could be 2 of them in the middle, and that situation varies. Again, our next video will go into that a little bit more in detail. So just for right now, make sure you're understanding minimum, maximum, and the range.